Hey everybody, it's your girl Pretty Girl Tip, and welcome back to the Good, the Bad, and the Fucking Ugly podcast. Today's episode, I'm gonna hold your hand virtually throughout this whole thing. It's called The Signs We Ignored Even Though They Were There. Now you may be asking yourself, nobody really wakes up and says, you know what, I want to ignore the red flags and destroy my peace. No, that's not how any of this happens. Most people ignore the signs because they genuinely want the love to work. Now, you may also be thinking to yourself, well, why do we want the love to survive? It's simple. When you care deeply about someone, your mind naturally searches for reasons to stay instead of reasons to leave. You start focusing on the good moments that you had, their potential, their apologies, the memories, and who they used to be, instead of the patterns, the inconsistency, and the emotional damage. Because love makes people hopeful, sometimes dangerously hopeful. And also, to the fear of starting over, I am 37 and I am divorced. I've been divorced for about two years maybe, but I was married for 15 years. Yep. And some people who will be in my situation will be like, I don't want to start over. It's just better to stay. No. A lot of people stay because leaving feels terrifying. You get the fear of loneliness, you get the fear of dating again, you get the fear of wasting time, the fear that you won't find another connection. It's a million people in this world. There is somebody for everybody. That's my mini TED Talk in this. Attachment to comfort and familiarity. Sometimes people stay in painful situations because familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar freedom. Okay? All right, now, with all of this, we also have the emotions to play into this. We have an emotional attachment that clouds your judgment. Accepting mixed signals, excusing disrespect, minimizing emotional neglect, and over-explaining someone's behavior. When you think about all these things together, you kind of sum it up to attachment can make obvious things feel confusing. Mainly these things I just named. Also, your heart can become emotionally addicted to moments your mind knows aren't enough. Also, we go back into our last podcast and you start seeing potential instead of reality, which is true in certain situations. You stop looking at who they are consistently and start loving the version of them you hope you will finally see, which is true. You think somebody's going to be something that they could be, and they're just not giving you that at that time. Potential is dangerous because it creates emotional loyalty to a future that hasn't happened yet. It only has happened in your mind. You give yourself these little nuggets to get you throughout the day. Like, once they heal, things will be better. Once they're ready, we can take over the world. Once life calms down, and I'm going to keep it a whole buck with you, life never calms down. Never, ever calms down. So you keep waiting for a version of them that only existed during the good moments. And then also we go into this part of trauma bonds and inconsistency addiction. And so what this really means is you get used to hot and cold behavior, emotional highs and lows, inconsistency creating obsession, and confusion mistaken for passion. Your nervous system can become addicted to the unpredictability. As someone who suffers from anxiety and depression, this right here is a trigger for me, and I'm gonna hold my own hand when I say this. So the same inconsistency that's hurting you can also become the thing that keeping you emotionally attached. And I'm gonna hold your hand when I say this. 2 hands now. My hands are out. Let's go. Chaos feels like chemistry when dysfunction is familiar. I'm gonna say it again. I'm gonna squeeze your hand this time. Chaos feels like chemistry when dysfunction is familiar. Okay, I'm gonna take my hand back. I got work to do. All right. Sometimes people don't ignore red flags because they're weak. They ignore them because they're emotionally invested. And when you're emotionally invested into something, you give your all. Everything. Down to the last bone. Because they remember the good version of who this person was. Because they believe in potential. Because they want the story to end differently. And sometimes because admitting the truth would mean admitting the relationship is already breaking their heart. And that's the sad part of it. But eventually, the excuses get heavier than the love. And that's when people start lying to themselves just to stay emotionally comfortable. Now, we always start with the good, but now it's time to get into the bad. The lies we tell ourselves. Simple, right? We tell ourselves lies to keep things going because we are emotionally involved. But sometimes the biggest liar in the relationship isn't even them anymore. It's the version of you trying to make the relationship survive at all costs. You may ask yourself, maybe I'm overthinking. This is usually the first lie. Your intuition notices emotional distance, changed behavior, lack of effort, inconsistency, dishonesty, and energy shifts. But instead of trusting yourself, you start questioning yourself. You felt this shift immediately, then you spend months trying to convince yourself that you just imagined it, that this was all this in your head. Overthinking usually starts after repeated inconsistency. You didn't just come up with this on your own. Your nervous system notices what your heart doesn't want to accept yet. Again, your nervous system notices what your heart doesn't want to accept yet. You start telling yourself, oh, they're just stressed. And this is where people start making excuses. You get to making excuses for these people for poor communication, for lack of effort, the disrespect that you've been given, emotional neglect, and disappearing emotionally. You started turning permanent behavior into temporary excuses. Because understanding someone's struggle doesn't mean accepting treatment that destroys your peace. And I'm in the time of my life where I just want peace. If you say 2 + 2 = 18, I'm not going to argue with you. I'm just not. But then we sound like we don't care. We do care. But we also realize that nobody's perfect. Now, this sounds real mature, right? Nobody's perfect. That's true. But sometimes it becomes self-betrayal disguised as compassion. Imperfections are human, and that is the truth. Repeated behavior, though, is a pattern. You started confusing accountability with being too hard on people. Wanting consistency, honesty, effort, and respect doesn't mean that your standards are unrealistic. Those are your standards, and they're not unrealistic. You start to think things will go back to how they were. And this was real dangerous because now you're no longer attached to the present relationship, you're attached to a memory. You're chasing the honeymoon phase, holding on to old versions of people, replaying old moments, surviving off emotional breadcrumbs. You kept trying to resurrect a version of this relationship that no longer existed, physically or mentally, just emotionally. Sometimes the beginning of the relationship becomes emotional propaganda for the ending. And at this point, you stop listening to your intuition and you start managing your disappointment instead. You started to normalize confusion, you started to normalize inconsistency, and you normalize anxiety. And every time reality hurts you, you create another excuse just to emotionally survive this. I'm going to hold your hand this time, and I'm going to squeeze it. You started gaslighting yourself before they even had a chance to. Let that sit with you for a second. You started to gaslight yourself before they even had a chance to. Because some of us kept abandoning our own instincts, trying to protect the relationship that was already hurting us. Now, I'm going to ask some questions, more reflections. That way, when you get done listening to this podcast, and if you're crying, you've dried your tears, and you really had a chance to just really hone in, just think about this. How many times did your body feel unsafe before your mind had admitted something was wrong? I know I have. Because again, my nervous system tells me before anything. Another question, if the first one didn't get to you. How many excuses did you create for behavior that you would have warned your friends about? I'm raising my hand virtually because you cannot see me. That's me. And also this last one. If the first two didn't get you, maybe this one will. How much of the relationship was actually love? And how much relationship was emotional survival? Now, we ain't got through the good and we ain't got through the bad. Now it's time for the fucking ugly. And the ugliest part of all of this, eventually reality catches up with us. And when it does, you're forced to sit with the truth you tried to avoid from the beginning. The moment you realize you were right all along and this wasn't just in your head. This is the part that nobody talks about, Not the breakup, not the betrayal, not even losing them. The ugliest part is realizing your intuition warned you early and you abandoned yourself anyway. There's a specific kind of heartbreak that comes with knowing deep down you already knew the truth. Not all at once, but in pieces. The late responses, the inconsistency, the lack of effort, the emotional distance, the feeling in your stomach that you kept trying to ignore. Baby, that was your intuition whispering to you something ain't right. But instead of listening to it, you loved it even harder. But now we shift to something that's even uglier. Embarrassment. One of the hardest emotions after everything falls apart is embarrassment. Feeling naive, replaying things that you ignored, realizing other people saw it too, questioning your judgment, feeling ashamed for staying too long. You start thinking back, why did I accept this shit? Why did I keep believing in them? Why didn't I lose myself just to finally see the truth? Nothing humbles you faster than realizing the red flags were there the entire time. Then we also deal with regret. Time lost, emotional energy, wasted time, opportunities missed, staying after the relationship was already emotionally dead. You just don't grieve the person, you grieve the version of yourself that you kept hoping. You start mourning all the time you kept spending trying to save something that was slowly destroying you from the inside out. Now I'm going to hold your hand, one hand this time, because it's not that deep yet. You kept giving chances because you hoped love would change the outcome. I'm squeezing your hand and I'm taking mine back. Because this next section requires 2 hands and closed eyes. Your resentment towards yourself. Sometimes after heartbreak, the person you're angry at isn't even them. It's yourself. Because you ignored your intuition, you abandoned all of your standards, you're tolerating disrespect, betrayal of your own needs, and then you start shrinking yourself to keep someone comfortable. And then you start to realize how many times you chose them over yourself. You kept trying to understand them while failing to protect yourself. And now after all of this, you start replaying every warning sign that came to you. After everything ends, your mind becomes a crime scene. And that's a literal thing. Because now you're replaying conversations, excuses, suspicious moments, emotional shifts, moments you felt uneasy, the first red flag, and the first lie, but also the very first disappointment. And suddenly all these things that you were confused about before makes perfect sense afterwards. Because clarity after heartbreak can feel real cruel. Extremely cruel. Now, the ugliest feeling is realizing your intuition warned you early. You abandoned yourself anyway. You kept silencing your instincts just to keep the relationship alive. You called your anxiety overthinking. You called your pain patience. You called your self-abandonment love. And maybe that's the real heartbreak. Not that they hurt you, because you knew all along and you stopped protecting yourself from it. But eventually you realize the relationship didn't fail because you loved too hard. It failed because you kept trying to force reality to become something that never was there. Because healing starts the moment you stop blaming yourself for wanting love and start leaning and learning how to trust yourself again. The energy in all of this, healing isn't just about getting over them. It's rebuilding trust within yourself. Because heartbreak changes the way people see themselves. Eventually, when they ignore their own intuition to keep love alive. So we stop doing these things. We stop ignoring patterns. One of the biggest lessons heartbreak teaches you is that patterns matter more than promises. Consistency reveals truth. Behavior matters more than potential. Repeated actions are answers. Emotional confusion is information. People tell you who they are through repetition. If someone consistently disappoints you, that is a pattern. Stop waiting for the personality change disguised as potential. Red flags didn't become red later. You just stopped repainting them. Now, I didn't hold your hand for that one because we've been holding hands a lot. But, the red flags didn't become redder. You just stopped repainting them. We need to stop romancing inconsistency. Chaos is not passion. Confusion is not chemistry. And inconsistency is not depth. Hot and cold behavior, emotional unpredictability, breadcrumbing, and intermediate affection. Some of us got addicted to emotional highs because the lows made the lows feel more intense. Real love doesn't keep you emotionally starving between moments of affection. Peace feels unfamiliar when you've been conditioned to survive through emotional chaos. We're going to be choosing peace over potential. Stop dating people for who they might become because they might not never become these people. Stop building relationships off of future fantasies while ignoring present reality. Accepting people for who they are. Letting go of imagined versions. Emotional maturity, self-protection, and choosing stability. Potential cannot love you back. Only behavior can. I'ma hold your hand. You deserve relationships that feel safe consistently, not relationships that only feel magical occasionally. The right relationship won't require you to portray yourself to keep it alive. I've took my hand back. Thank you very much. Trust actions more than words. Words are easy. Patterns are honest. You deal with empty promises, inconsistency, manipulation through hope, and emotional accountability. People can say anything, and that is the truth. But behavior always tells the truth eventually. Pay attention to how someone loves you repeatedly, not how they apologize after hurting you. Now, two hands, because this is the rebirth of it all. Maybe healing looks like this for us. No longer begging for consistency, no longer over-explaining our pain, no longer shrinking our standards just to keep someone comfortable. Maybe healing is finally deciding I deserve peace more than I deserve potential. And maybe for the first time in all of this, we stop abandoning ourselves to keep love alive. Your intuition was never trying to ruin your relationship. It was just trying to save you, baby. Now, we are done. I have my hands back. If you're crying, I'm sorry. We're going to dry our tears. But if this episode hurt you, good. I'm sorry, though. Always not my intention. Because sometimes healing starts the moment the denial ends. So this is the little nugget I'm going to leave you on before I go into some other things. The moment you start trusting yourself again, you stop settling for love that requires self-betrayal to survive. Okay, and good news. Make sure you guys are checking out our socials. I am interacting all week through stories, maybe some posts too. Your girl got a calendar, so she's a little bit more organized. Yes, she's organized. So on Mondays, we have a segment called Let's Be Honest. On Tuesdays, we're doing our favorite red flag of the week. Wednesdays, we're doing Read That Again, which is basically just rereading and seeing that sits in your spirit. Thursdays, we're doing This Your Sign Thursday. And Friday, we're going to do a Break It Down Friday. So we're trying to just get everything out. So we're interacting. So we're doing a thing. So this could be great. So this is your girl, Pretty Girl Tip. And this has been the Good, the Bad, and the Fucking Ugly podcast. I see you guys next week. Love you. Bye.